بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني فقولي السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. And thank you all for joining us on this special live stream in partnership with Mecca Books, where inshallah ta'ala I'll be sharing more about the Barakah Effect. My name is Mohammed Faris. I'm the founder of the Productive Muslim Company and author of the Productive Muslim, where faith meets productivity, as well as the Barakah Effect, More with Less. And I'm honored to work with my good friend Athar from Mecca Books, who really has been a great support of our work over the years. And he's been one of the people who hosted our books in his bookshop, his beautiful bookshop. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put barakah in everyone who reads this book and benefits from all the great work that Mecca Books does, inshallah ta'ala. So today, inshallah ta'ala, I wanted to share with you, we'll do this in two parts, if it's okay. I want to share with you all, inshallah ta'ala, a bit more about the Barakah Effect and so the key concepts of the Barakah Effect, especially with Ramadan, right? So kind of almost like a Ramadan reflection on the Barakah Effect. And then inshallah ta'ala we'll go into some Q&A, so feel free to ask questions. This should last about an hour, inshallah ta'ala, so I'll be more happy to answer your questions about anything I discuss here or in general about this idea of the Barakah Effect, inshallah ta'ala. Before we get started, what I like to do is always start off with a conscious Bismillah. Sometimes when we start something, start a project, start a session, or Bismillah, we jump straight in. But one of the ways that I've discovered that really brings barakah into a moment and brings barakah to a workshop or a session or any experience in general is for us to really consciously say Bismillah. Say Bismillah, recognizing that we bring Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's name in this moment, that we're uttering his name, that we are sort of invoking the lafz al-jalala, that we're trying to, be present, that this moment, this session we're here together to learn is beneficial is for his sake. And subhanAllah, perhaps sometimes when you say a conscious Bismillah in this moment, you find that this session becomes much more beneficial. Hopefully it affects your heart. Hopefully it becomes a means for change for the better, inshallah. So take a moment and say a conscious Bismillah. I'd like to start off with a story, and the story is mentioned in the book. See, there was a man who was quite poor, and he had a dream of two men or two angels coming to him in the dream. And they say to him, there is a treasure under this tree of 1,000 dinars. Should we show you where this tree is? The man asked them a single question: is there barakah in them? The two men said, no, there's no barakah in them. So the man said, I'm not interested. The second night, the two men came again and said, there's a treasure. The treasure now is 500 dinars. Would you like to know more where this tree is so you can find this treasure? Again, the poor man asked, is there barakah in them? And the two angels said, no, there's no barakah in them. So he said, I'm not interested. This continued a few nights till on one night, the two angels came and said, there's now 2 dinars left under this tree. Should we show you where this tree is? And he again asked, is there barakah in them? This time he said, yes, there's barakah in these 2 dinars. So he said, show me the tree is. So he was shown where the tree is. He got up in the morning, he went and found the tree, and he found those 2 dinars. The next day, as he's going back home, he donated 1 dinar for charity. It's already barakah in that moment while he gave away some money for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the second dinar, he went and bought some fish from the market. And when he went home and he cut the fish open, he found a jewel worth thousands of dinars. This story is one of many, many stories that I've come across on this idea of barakah. This idea how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can give you more with less. How Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can put barakah in ways and unexpected ways. And over the years, I've been obsessed with this question: what is barakah? We hear it a lot. We hear it from our parents, our grandparents, barakallah feek, when people get married, barakallah lakuma. When you get a car, may Allah put barakah in your car. When you get a job, mabruk for your job. Every time this word barakah keeps repeating across our lingo as Muslims growing up with this word barakah. And really wanted to understand what this barakah is. So I went on a journey, trying to understand what barakah is. And I looked through books and I asked some scholars, and it kind of developed a web of meaning. So I'll go over some of the definitions that I've come across in barakah, and then I'll share a definition I use in the book that will perhaps give us a comprehensive understanding of barakah, inshallah. So first of all, Imam Raghav Sfahani, who is great with language and great with sort of his mufradat al-Quran, the words of the Quran, he says, Barakah hiya thubutul khayrul ilahi fi shay. Barakah is the attachment of divine goodness to a thing. So think of anything. Think of your time. Think of your wealth. Think of your children. Think of your house. Think of your laptop. Think of your project. Think of your bookstore. Think of anything. Anything that has tangible, intangible. When Allah puts barakah on it, it's almost like a spiritual force, right? This thing that comes or wraps around this thing, right? Where it could be your time, your wealth, your money, your children. And as a result of this barakah attaching itself to this thing, there's this spiritual reaction. We'll talk more about this Barakah Effect, which we'll touch the title of the book, right? And for me, that's fascinating because that tells me this barakah is a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is something divine that comes and attaches itself into our physical realm, which is very powerful and empowering to hear that, inshallah. Second definition from Dr. Samir Mahmood, one of, again, some of the scholars who's based in Australia, and I asked him, what is barakah? So he said, barakah is a spiritual energy or force that emanates from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that enters into people, places, objects, who become conduits for this kind of energy. So for example, think about when you ever go to Mecca, Medina, right? And you can feel the barakah in the air, especially if you go to Medina, right? Where Muhammad made dua that may Allah put twice the amount of barakah in Medina as in Mecca. So when you go to Medina, you feel something in the air. That's the barakah. You see barakah into people, so barakah into places, barakah into objects, right? So the idea of this is barakah can also be placed in barakah in time. For example, barakah in the month of Ramadan, barakah in the Laylatul Qadr, right? These are all ways that Allah puts barakah in the Quran, right? These are all ways that Allah can put barakah in places, people, objects who become conduits for this kind of energy. Prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala were sources of barakah, for example, also ways to experience barakah. So again, this is a very powerful reminder of where this barakah doesn't just, it's not something that comes once, but also sometimes is placed in places, is placed in time, is placed in people, is placed in objects as well. Another definition, Dr. Abdullah Rahman, who is again one of the world's leading researchers in Islamic psychology, he goes, barakah is an abundant, flowing, positive energy that is the result of being aligned with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the element that barakah requires you to be aligned with Him, right? And it's one of the reasons why I personally don't like the definition barakah is blessing. Because barakah is blessing, okay, Allah blesses everybody, whether Muslim, the non-Muslim, believer, non-believer. But when it's aligned, when you're aligned, there's something almost like extra gift you get from Him. I think it's very powerful to can experience that. Dr. Tamara Gray, I asked her, what is barakah? She said a spiritual force that comes to a person's life and brings increase without defined input. That's another thing that's quite challenging with trying to explain barakah, because it's hard. It's not like 1 + 1 = 2, right? It's sometimes you see this increase and you can't explain that increase. There's almost like a no defined input. It's almost beyond you. It's beyond the material world. It's something that it's hard to explain. It's experiential, is another way of putting it as well, inshallah. That's why I also like Dr. Khalid Abdul Rashid's definition. He said, barakah, who is a chaplain at Harvard University, he goes, barakah is a mystical experience, right? It's an experience. It's a form of communication from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So now, with all these definitions put together, he's like, well, what is barakah, right? And subhanAllah, this is one of the things about when you try to define a divine concept, it's actually it's very hard, because our limited capacity, our limited intellectual capacity, human capacity to try to encompass something as divine is very hard. But this is an attempt, right? This is an attempt for us to try to put together a definition that we can work with as we explain what barakah is, inshallah. So the way we kind of put it in the books, that barakah is a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So it's a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that enters into things, or that are tangible and intangible, right? So barakah is a gift. So this thing called barakah, it comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, enters into things, tangible and intangible. Could be time, people, places, objects, ideas, insights. You might have an idea, Allah puts barakah in an idea that kind of affects a lot of people. Could be a business, could be a project, could be a smartphone, could be, this next, that cash flow, could be anything. Allah puts barakah into anything, tangible and intangible. Now, when Allah puts barakah into these things, the challenge or intangible, there's an experience, what I call a Barakah Effect. And I'll talk more about the experience in the next couple of slides. But there's an experience, usually some kind of growth or abundance or positivity or inner peace. I'll talk more about these experiences and how to experience in barakah, inshallah. But there's one part here that I like to bring up, and that is, when you're experiencing barakah, it should make you turn back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It should make you more grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It should make you even more appreciative of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which increases the gifts from Him. So that's why I will say barakah is sometimes, the way I say barakah is blessing feels like if something is missing. It's, Fir'aun had a lot of blessings, but we won't call that barakah, right? Because he used those blessings to turn away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But barakah, when barakah, what's really is barakah, when that blessing, those gifts, those experiences kind of brings you back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or makes you more grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's where the complete circle is, inshallah. So this is a kind of holistic definition, inshallah. I hope that captures some of the spirit of the different definitions. And again, I won't say this is a perfect definition. It's definitely an attempt. And I hope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sort of accepts this definition from us and makes it something that we can work with as we try to explain what barakah is to each other, inshallah ta'ala. Now, how to experience barakah, right? Because that's the barakah is experiential. And I like to divide barakah experiences in two ways. One is almost like a physical manifestation of barakah. And this is the one that we normally, most of us associate barakah with, which is the material increase in sustenance. Right? We see somebody who started a shop and subhanAllah, it's packed and people are always buying from it and it's always busy. We say, oh, mashallah, so much barakah in that shop. Or we see somebody who's doing a lot of good work and mashallah, the project blows up and mashallah, so much barakah, mashallah, in that project or in that exercise. Like sometimes Allah puts just the way, when you see some increase, some material increase, that's one way of experiencing barakah. But there are other ways of experiencing barakah, and these are ways that come from the actual word barakah itself. For example, stability. The Arabs would say Barakah al-Jamal, right? Barakah al-Jamal means that the camel sat down and is basically not moving. And I was speaking to a linguist and she was saying that even the word parking comes from Barakah al-Jamal, like the camel sat place, almost like parking, like Barakah, parking. Anyway, maybe it's a bit far-fetched, but apparently she made the connection there. She said there's actually something about if you look historically with Barakah, and even the word to park your car or park your camel, so to speak. But the idea is a stability. That is that it's almost like, again, when you have stability in stable health, stable mental health, stable relationship, stable income, stable situation in general, right? I'm sure all of us experienced COVID and how COVID was, threw us off, right? The instability. But even through COVID, we saw some people who were just completely lost it. They were so paranoid, so upset. It affected them. And others who were, despite hardship, despite losing loved ones, despite going through some tough COVID moments, they were stable in their faith, stable in their ability to deal with that situation. Stability is a form of barakah. Also, another definition of barakah is barakah sama, which means the rain or the heavens is raining continuously. And in that perspective, continuity is a form of barakah. So, for example, let's say you're starting a project. Maybe it's not increasing, but becoming so big and popular. Maybe, it has ups and downs, it's not very stable. But it's continuing. Like, alhamdulillah, you keep going. You don't give up on it. It's keep going. Maybe there's a small halaqah you started. Maybe a small project you started. Maybe some good work you've done. It's continuous, right? Alhamdulillah, that's barakah. So continuity is a form of barakah. Just because if it says, especially with good deeds, let's say it's a good deed you've been doing for so long, that's also a form of barakah, inshallah. So these are some of the physical manifestations of barakah. But as I mentioned before, they could be, but more about the unseen manifestation of barakah, right? And this is where sometimes I will say barakah is not also about having this rosy picture. People think, oh, barakah means all positive and nice and abundance and positive. And sometimes you might be going through a tough situation, right? You're losing a loved one. You're going through some really tough situation that, it shakes you. But you somehow, subhanAllah, have this deep inner peace. SubhanAllah, I had a friend of mine who lost 4 sisters and 1 brother in 1 car accident. You can just imagine the trauma. But when you speak to him, he had that deep inner peace. And I thought, subhanAllah, like that ability, again, stability in his heart. That's barakah. You have that stability in your heart, that deep inner peace to be able to handle such a shock. I mean, that itself is a form of barakah. It's also sometimes, ease and facilitation of affairs, meaning that maybe you're facing a tough situation and you're like, maybe a tough legal situation, maybe you have overwhelming debt. You're like, how would I get out of this? You honestly don't know. You're like, I don't know how I'll get out of this. Like, I'm so overwhelmed. It's overburdening. I have this legal case against me. I have this thing. How would I get out of this? And somehow Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes a way out for you. That's a form of barakah as well. Some ease and facilitation of affairs. And the third is the non-material sustenance. Non-material sustenance could be words of support, right? It could be insights. It could be that random WhatsApp forward from an auntie who kind of gives it at the right time you want to hear it. It could be someone saying, hey, good job, keep going, right? That sometimes, and it could be an idea that you have that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts barakah in it, and subhanAllah becomes, takes over and becomes a thing that you do for the rest of your life. So non-material sustenance, sometimes Allah will send you sustenance, not in the form of material sustenance, financial sustenance. Sometimes it could be non-material, the ideas, the insights. Like you see something that no one else sees. You have an insight, you have a contribution, you have something that's very powerful that changes, a person's life or community's life or a history. Or you have a vision, you think through things. That's also a form of barakah, inshallah ta'ala. So like you all, inshallah ta'ala, as part of today's workshop, just to make it more practical, inshallah ta'ala, is to spend some time this evening with your parents, with your spouse, with your kids, and share a barakah story that you experience, and encourage them to share a barakah story, right? If we do this if I usually have a longer time, I would have sat down, actually love to hear your stories. But for now, I want you to kind of maybe take a note tonight at iftar or at suhoor, maybe if you're awake. Say, hey, let's talk about barakah. How did you experience barakah as a family? Oh, yeah, barakah story you've been through. Maybe it's the one time you try to save up money and then you had to give it to charity, and subhanAllah put barakah for you. We had so many stories like this. People had to put barakah and they went for hajj or umrah. Or somebody who spent some time serving their parents and subhanAllah puts barakah in their wealth. Like so many of these stories where, you experience barakah, either physical manifestation barakah or unseen manifestation barakah that you've experienced in your life. Take a moment to write that down. Take a moment to share that. And the reason why I say this is because sometimes a lot of us, we tend to complain that, oh, there's no barakah in my time. There's no barakah in my wealth. We tend to have a very narrow view of how we're experiencing barakah. And what I'm hoping to do when you start sharing your story, you realize, oh, subhanAllah, there's so much barakah in my life, right? Even having stability, right? That's a huge. If you have like a normal day, right? No major accidents, no major issues, no ups or downs, just a normal day. That's barakah by itself. So I hope you can put your barakah goggles on, as I say, put your barakah goggles on, and just to correctly realize that, subhanAllah, there's so much barakah in my life, and that's very powerful. And sometimes I understand that people struggle with this sometimes because I feel like, I feel like I'm losing barakah. I feel there's no barakah in my time. For example, most of us, would sort of struggle with the idea of time, where you feel like, man, where did my time go? It's Ramadan already. I mean, I thought it's another few months. And we'll talk more about how we lost barakah and how we can regain barakah, inshallah ta'ala. But for now, I want you to really start thinking, where in your life you experience barakah, and how can you share that with others? And also let your children hear these stories, because that's when they know that these spiritual experiences are real, right? They're not some nice fairy tales. They hear about them from the time of Muhammad sallallahu, but they hear that this is something that they can experience as well by aligning themselves with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah ta'ala. Now, for those of you who know my work, they know that I am a productivity geek, right? And my first book, The Productive Muslim, really was about productivity and how do we define productivity from an Islamic worldview. And in that book, I said that the way we define productivity is not through in terms of output over input. From a human definition, I said it's about managing your energy, your focus, and time towards a beneficial output. So, for example, if I want to be productive, let's say I want to write a book, right? I need energy, for sure. And I need also to be focused and I need time. If I lack energy, if I'm tired all the time, or I'm just have lack energy, it's very hard to be productive. If I have energy but I have zero focus, right? I have energy but I'm bouncing off the wall, I'm all over the place, it's hard to be productive. And if I have energy and focus, I just don't have time. I'm so overwhelmed with other projects, I cannot be productive. So I need both. I need all three: energy, focus, and time. This equation is quite helpful if you're asking yourself, why am I being unproductive? Why am I missing something? Why do I feel lazy all the time? Why am I procrastinating? Ask yourself one of these three questions. Am I lacking energy? Am I lacking focus? Or am I lacking time, inshallah? But for me, what's fascinating as I was doing more research on this idea of productivity, was trying to capture, where does barakah fit into this? And I noticed that, subhanAllah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can put barakah in our energy, put barakah in our focus, and put barakah in our time. So what does that mean? It means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will put barakah in energy. For example, you might have limited energy, but subhanAllah, you feel like you can do so much, right? Or you're able to do much more than whatever limited capacity. We experience this in Ramadan. For example, you're fasting and you're praying Taraweeh and your energy is lower, but some of this barakah in the energy, whatever energy you have left, you seem to be doing some good work with it. You're helping the community, you're doing some projects. Personally, for me, I'm more productive in Ramadan compared to the rest of the year. There's something about the barakah of Ramadan is unbelievable. So barakah and energy, barakah and focus, meaning that you're not distracted. You're focused on the right things. You have the right insights. You're able to focus on the right thing. And again, I find Ramadan is a great time to focus as well. The barakah and focus and barakah in time. Barakah in time means that almost expands your time for you. And I'm sure a lot of you have experienced this when you have wake up early in the morning. When you wake up early in the morning, sometimes you start getting work done after Fajr, like in the early morning hours or before Fajr. And then you say, wow, like I got so much done in a few hours. That's the barakah time. Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu spoke about this, said there's barakah in my ummah in the early hours. So barakah in time is definitely a way to, so you can actually experience it. So I think for us I will say to people like the barakah factor, this is the missing soul of productivity. You know, sometimes, again, with most of our human sciences, we kind of disconnected spirituality from human sciences. And I think what we need to experience is how to, to experience barakah inshallah ta'ala in our time inshallah ta'ala. So how to experience barakah in our energy, how to experience barakah in our focus, how to experience barakah in our time, how to bring those two together inshallah ta'ala. So barakah in energy, barakah in focus, barakah in our time. Now, when Allah puts barakah in energy, focus, and time, what happens is that the results and outcome beyond expectations, right? And let me give you examples. Imagine you are, when you're trying to write a book, right? And you write a book and you have two authors. One writes a book and energy, focus, and time. One writes a book and Allah puts barakah in the energy, focus, and time. That's probably like maybe one, it's not about material results as well. It's not about which is a bestseller, not bestseller, but which is more beneficial, which is more impactful, which one's the one that lasts longer, which are the result out beyond expectation, inshallah. So I think that is really, really powerful. How do you have, when sometimes Allah puts barakah in energy, focus, and time. These are things that our scholars used to be aware of. They used to really think about how can they bring more barakah into their works. For example, Imam Bukhari, when he's writing his books of hadith, he was making ghusl and praying istikhara before writing a single work of hadith. For example, Fatima al-Fihri, when she was building Qayrawaan University, she was fasting, right, while the university is being built. Why is she fasting? She's trying to take barakah into her project. This idea of us harnessing, right, bringing barakah in our project, bringing barakah in our work, that was part of being productive. It was not, sometimes his scholars, they would face the qibla when they write. Why? Seeking the barakah of facing the qibla. They would, think about their intentions, right? They would think about, they'll be in a state of wudu, for example, before writing a single thing. Why are they doing this? Again, from a productivity perspective, I feel like that's a dish that doesn't seem to add thing, but they're conscious that this brings barakah in my work as well. So when you start thinking about how can I attract barakah in my energy, attract barakah in my focus, attract barakah in my time, that's when we're going to see result outcome beyond our expectations, inshallah ta'ala. So let me, sometimes I talk about how we lost barakah. In the book, I go into detail about how we lost barakah as a society, as a community. I talk about the 5 pillars of hustle culture. I talk about different ways we've lost barakah. But the thing that comes to mind is that, subhanAllah, this hadith that I'm sure, you read this hadith, it feels like this describes our time. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ says, the hour will not be established until time passes rapidly, such that a year is like a month is like a week is like a day is like an hour, and an hour is like a flicker of a flame, right? And subhanAllah, this idea that, I'm sure all of us experience it, we feel like the time passes so quickly. And we don't feel like, we're not like, where did the month go? Where did the year go? And when you read this hadith, there's 2 reactions. There's a reaction of thinking, oh, well, khalas, day judgment is coming. I guess this is it, right? This is this part of the journey towards day judgment. Or we could look at this hadith and remember another hadith that teaches us that when we see the day of judgment coming, if the final hour comes, and you have a sapling in your hands, plant it, right? So yes, we're seeing the signs. Yes, we're of course getting close to their judgment, but that should not let us feel like, okay, it means there's no barakah. Of course, inshallah ta'ala, we'll always try to experience barakah, but there's ways we can try to attract barakah in our lives. And perhaps we need to be more proactive to really think, how can you attract barakah in our time, attract barakah in our work, attract barakah in the day-to-day, inshallah ta'ala. So I hope that, yes, that we are, as we're seeing the signs of the judgment, we're seeing that we're losing something in the air. This will also be this people plant the seeds to attract barakah in our time, inshallah ta'ala. So I talk about the idea of, in the book, one of the key ideas I speak about is the idea of barakah culture versus hustle culture. And this is an important concept because, again, back to the productivity idea, when we are, what is the environment, right? And how we approach things. And most of us have subscribed to what we call the hustle culture environment, where we are our measure of success is material results, when it's very ego-centered, very worldly focused, very about results and outcomes. And I wanted to challenge that notion because for me, it's like the idea of productivity is about Allah accepting our work. It's about being God-centered, about being sincere, being akhirah focused, about thinking about how this helps me in the long term. That's what I wanted to share, inshallah. So I wrote an article, and this also in the book, the idea of Barakah culture versus hustle culture. And we said that the difference in the hustle culture environment, hustle culture is very ego-centered, like me, myself, and I. Barakah culture is very God-centered. So what does Allah want from me? Hustle culture is about personal success driven. It's about the accolades, the awards, the showing off, like, hey, I've done this. Versus Barakah culture is about the purpose and impact driven, even though it might not be recognized. There's probably, we have some amazing people who are doing amazing, impactful work, and you won't hear about them. Hustle culture is very myopic, very about this world, the 40, 50, 60 years I'm here. Versus Barakah culture is about being impactful in this world for the akhirah. They're thinking long term. They're thinking about things about how can I leave a waqf behind? How can I leave a sustainable? How can I leave good deeds that outlive me? How can I, really plant for my akhirah? Hustle culture about the material results, right? The outcome, the results. Versus Barakah culture about the acceptance. They'll accept this work. That's why, subhanAllah, when we hear when scholars who write books, or I wrote a story in the book about Imam Malik and then Muwatta Imam Malik. Imam Malik first wrote the very famous book on Muwatta, and Muwatta was almost like a summary of the different rulings, right, that the Muslims need in their lives. And the Khalifa at that time sort of asked Imam Malik to write this book on Muwatta because he realized this Muslim world expanding, and they wanted almost like an easy to refer book to people can read and benefit from. So Imam Malik wrote the Muwatta, but at the same time, other scholars wrote sort of the Muwatta, also like a very similar concept. So some people say, yeah, Imam Malik, other people wrote a very similar book. And he made a very simple response, said, we'll see which one Allah accepts, right? And so which one Allah accepts. And subhanAllah, Imam Malik's Muwatta is the one that lasted, the one that others have probably forgotten. Again, not to say others perhaps not sincere, but perhaps Imam had even more sincerity in his work, and Allah accepted that work and benefited. Till today, people are still benefiting from it, inshallah. So folks got acceptance versus just results, right? I produced a book. It's about Allah accepting this. Hustle culture is very never satisfied, right? It's very, very cynical, very not content. SubhanAllah, I've been to organizations and that I've sort of trained and worked with, and we have very good benefits, very good salaries, but they're not happy, not satisfied. They feel like there's something is missing. Whereas Barakah culture have that rida, contentment. Hustle culture about seeking credit, about the scarcity mindset is not enough, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, "Ash-shaytan ya'idukum al-faqr wa ya'muru bil-fahsha." The shaitan promises you poverty. You see poverty in front of your eye, even though you might be financially doing well, but it's the scarcity mindset is not enough. Versus Barakah culture is about abundance mindset, right? And there are many stories in the Muslim world, right? We hear the stories about you go to a souk and you start, you go to buy from somebody, goes, oh, don't buy from me because I've sold enough today. Go buy from my brother. That's an abundance mindset. And I've seen examples, and these are not just old stories that are actually modern, happening till today. It's abundance mindset versus a scarcity mindset, a grateful mindset. The other one, hustle culture, is very about being busy. Like being busy is like a badge of honor. Like, hey, look at me, I'm busy. Very distracted, very rushed, very busy. Versus focused, tranquil, present. I one of the articles we wrote is and also in the book, the daily routine of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? And think about it, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and how he achieved so much in so little time. Talk about barakah, right? The barakah of his life, subhanAllah. And he achieved so much in so little time. And when you look at it in his life, you don't hear none of the companions or his family members complaining, Ya Rasulullah, you're too busy for us. You're always busy, 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 right? Why? Because even though he might have spent a few minutes because he was involved in the community, involved with, he's with family, with those around him, but he was present, he was there, he really filled their cup versus distracted, rushed, busy in the modern sense. So I think we need to kind of really rethink what it means to be productive and how to be productive with this Barakah culture approach. But hustle culture is very entitled, right? It's a qarun, right? إِنَّمَا أُوتِيتُ عَلَى عِلْمٍ عِنْدِي. I was given this knowledge by I was given this by my own knowledge, by my own sort of smarts. Versus Barakah culture sense of responsibility, right? اجعلني Yusuf alayhi salam, اجعلني على خزائن الأرض إني حفيظ عليم. Make me the treasure of Egypt because I know what to do. إني حفيظ عليم. I know what's happening. I know how to take care of this. It's sense of responsibility, right? You take a role not because you're entitled for that role, but you feel like I can fulfill this role with amana, with trust, with sense of responsibility. It's very powerful. Hustle culture about big moves, short terms, pivots versus small, consistent, long-term effort, right? Sometimes hustle culture wants quick results, wants instant gratification, but sometimes some things take time. Some things require small, consistent, long-term effort. Now, I'm putting these two perspectives. Normally when I put these two chart, the question I always get, maybe somebody might ask this, Can you do both? Right? I always get that question. Like, can you do both? And I will say, you know what? We need to first be, I'm not saying Barakah culture, people think Barakah means lazy culture, right? Because if the opposite of hustling means you're being lazy. No. Barakah culture is hard work, right? You still have to work. In fact, if you're working harder because you are accountable to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You ask Allah's acceptance. You're thinking long term. You're purpose impact driven. You're content. Yes, you have abundance mindset. Yes, you're calm and tranquil, but there's a sense of responsibility. So it means Barakah culture is actually harder than hustle culture. But we need to center ourselves in Barakah culture. We need to start thinking about it. What is that? Let's not sort of become so consumed by hustle culture, so consumed by what I call workism, right? Where work has become religion, where work has been the organizing principle of our lives. Instead, saying, no, we're here as Muslims, we're here as abd of Allah, we're slaves of God. And work is part of life. And yes, we work hard, but it's not the definition. It doesn't define our values, it doesn't define our mindset, it doesn't define our behaviors. We are centered on how to serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we are productive as well, inshallah ta'ala. So now, at this point, people think, okay, Mohammed, how do you practically live this Barakah culture? It sounds too maybe idealistic. And there's some concepts here I'm going to share with you, inshallah ta'ala. Again, these concepts are discussed in detail in the book, and you can read the book to learn more about it, inshallah ta'ala. But just to briefly go over this, number one, part of as Barakah culture, we need to adopt a gardener mindset. And a gardener mindset means that we are think about a gardener. What does a gardener do? They plant seeds, they work hard, they try their best, but they detach themselves from the results. They cannot guarantee the results. Versus a carpenter mindset is fixed on the outcome, is fixed on the results. And the example I like to give here is Nuh alayhi salam, right? Nuh alayhi salam called his people day and night. He worked hard. And he did he dedicated himself for 950 years for his calling to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But in the end, only a few people believed in him. Now, from a hustle culture perspective, if I were to give you a product and tell, all right, go and market this product, and I'll give you 10 years to market this product. After 10 years, I come to you and say, hey, what happened? And, I sold like 5. You'd be like, what's wrong? As from a hustle perspective, you would consider it a failure. But from a Barakah culture perspective, again, it's back to the intention, back to the effort, back to what you've done, right? That's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala looks for. And even if the results may not be as expected. In fact, even what's more painful, perhaps what's more harder, was Nuh alayhi salam's own son did not believe in him. And I will say that for parents, we need to start thinking about how do you nurture our children with a gardener mindset, right? We put the right seeds, we put the right values, try to build the right environment, but we cannot guarantee the result. So sometimes I remind myself of this verse in the Quran that really centers on this gardener mindset. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Waqi'ah, أَفَرَأَيْتُم مَا تَحْرُثُونَ أَأَنْتُمْ تَزْرَعُونَهُ أَمْ نَحْنُ الزَّارِعُونَ. And have you seen that seed which you sow? Is it you who makes it grow, or are we the grower, right? You put that seed down. Could be that seed, could be your family, could be your work, could be your business, could be your project, could be something you're working hard towards, right? That seed you put down. Is it you who makes it grow? Right? Is it you who actually brings the fruit forward? Is it you who makes you turn your children, inshallah, into beautiful children that's supporting you? Is it you who makes that business grow? Is it you who makes that project come to life? Or is it Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And it really challenges us, right? Because we're so used to the hustle culture mindset of the hard work and one man show, it can do everything and bring results forward. But we also need to humble ourselves for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and recognize that outcomes and results up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I call this, being spiritually intelligent. Because you might say, well, Muhammad, are you saying we should just, give up and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring results forward? No, I'm saying is we need to recognize that we have free will, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, give us free will to choose. We also recognize that we live in a cause and effect world, which means there are natural laws we need to follow. We also need to recognize that nothing happens without Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's permission. Which means what? Which means as part of my being spiritually intelligent, I need to do the thinking, the planning, the decision-making, the discipline. I need to also take action, right? And align myself with His laws. And I also need to make dua. I also need to pray istikhara. I also have to trust Allah Ta'ala. Now those three parts come together. Now, the outcome is not up to me. The outcome is either it's good or great. I said, alhamdulillah, I have shukr, I have gratitude. Or it's not so great, but there's something you should work on. So I have sabr, persistence, patience, perseverance. I have to have sabr. Or it's just not good at all. It's like the door is closed. There's nothing more I can do. Okay, I have rida, contentment. Those are three ways I can look back at the outcome of inshallah. So free will, natural law, Allah's permission. So I'll give you examples. Like say, for example, you're trying to wake up, I'm going to give you a simple example. You're trying to wake up Fajr, right? So free will, I want to wake up Fajr or Tahajjud. Natural laws, okay, if I sleep early, I'll wake up early. I'll set the alarm. I'll ask somebody to wake me up. But let's say you decided to watch a Netflix show and you sleep at like 2 a.m., right? Yeah, less likely to wake up Fajr. But subhanAllah, your mom made dua for you that night. Ya Rab, wake my son for Fajr. Ya Rab, wake my daughter for Fajr. And you just wake up. So outcome is you wake up for Fajr. Even though naturally you thought maybe it was impossible to wake up inshallah. Again, another example, you're trying to build a business. All right, so free will, you set your intentions to build this business. Natural laws, you learn the business, you get mentorship, you get learning, you get coaching, you put resources, you invest, and you make dua, right? And subhanAllah, the project fails, or the business fails, right? And you think, oh my goodness. Now, there's two ways to reflect. Either you give up, or you come back, right? This is what called reading the sign. You come back and you start thinking, well, what can I do differently about my intention? What can be different about following natural laws? What can be different about seeking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's permission? This is the thing. This is not a one-way equation where if the outcome is bad, to give up. No, this is about also persisting. Salah ad-Din Ayyubi, he tried to conquer Jerusalem. It took him multiple attempts. It wasn't like the first time he walked in and he took over Jerusalem. It took multiple attempts. If he gave up, it's okay, it's not written for me. That would have been, a disaster. But he actually came back again and again. And that's the tawakkul. That's the tying your camel and having your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So again, I discuss this more in the book, but the idea is that this equation gives you that balance between what's within your hands and also recognizing that results are not up to you. The outcomes are up to you. You're not going to be judged by the outcome, but you'll be questioned by your intention. You'll be questioned by what means you've taken. And of course, by seeking Allah's permission, the more likelihood of the outcome happening or something better happening for you, inshallah. So sometimes I like to use this infographic to explain this. I say that the seed is your niyyah. The seed is your intention. And then that seed, right, you need to place in the right environment. Again, sometimes you have great ideas. Think about an intention for a project or intention to do good or intention to something, and it's the wrong environment or in a very toxic environment or a very environment is very hard for that seed to grow. Then it's very hard for that niyyah to grow. So let's say you have this great project, but the environment is not helping you. So the seed in the right environment makes a difference. So you should think about the environment as well. And then think about what can you bring to the table? What are the resources you have? And in this case, let's say your energy, focus, and time that you put it to the garden. Think about the thing that's outside of your control. The sunlight, the weather, right? What are those things that are outside of your control? And then think about the weeds, the thing that will distract you from your garden. And finally, you, the gardener, you bring the mindsets, the values, talk about this in a minute, rituals that as you nurture God. But you do all of this without guaranteeing the results, right? So example, let's say your seed is you want to raise a good Muslim family. That's your niyyah. You have a good Muslim family that shall worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you choose the right environment for them, you nurture them, you buy books, you support them, you try your best with the environment, you put energy, focus, and time growing your children. There's something outside your control. Could be outside influences, could be friends, could be the school, could be some things outside your control, could be some major thing happening. But you do your best, and then you try as much as possible to reduce distractions. And subhanAllah, one of your children just decides to become an atheist. Right? Or something just completely beyond you. Like, what have I done? I've done everything that I can. SubhanAllah, that's why somebody cannot guarantee the fruits. That's hard. That's really, really hard to accept because you think that I'm in control. I need to. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told Muhammad إِنَّكَ لَا تَهْدِي مَنْ أَحْبَبْتَ. You do not guide whom you love, right? But Allah guides whom He loves, whom He chooses. So I think the key here is to recognize that this is the Barakah culture where we focus on what's within our control, especially our intention, the environment, what resources we bring to the table. What's outside of control, we try to deal with, manage, distraction, try to reduce. We do not attach ourselves to the outcome. We recognize the outcomes up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's a very empowering way of looking at life because that also means back to this equation, and I like to sometimes think about this way. When you look at this equation, if outcome is not up to you, so to speak, then it means that even things that seem impossible are very possible by Allah's permission, right? So I always say that sometimes you look at this, let's say you have a big project in mind, and you're thinking to myself, I can't do this. Yes, of course, in your hand you can, but what's within your control? Well, I have the intention, I work hard, I ask Allah, and I pursue it. It might take multiple generations. It might take a long time. It might take something beyond me, but the fact that I have the intention, natural laws, Allah's permission, that's all within my control. And I detach myself from the outcome, that means I don't get overwhelmed so quickly. If I tell you to, someone says, oh, memorize the Quran is so hard. Okay, well, what's within your control? Free will, you make the decision. Natural laws, you work with a teacher, make dua. Now, whether you memorize Quran or not, that's up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but you do your part. You do your part and not give up so quickly, inshallah. So also look at this as a very empowering way as well to think about your life, inshallah. Alrighty. I know we're getting close to I want to give some time, so there's some questions here, inshallah. So one way to also experience Barakah culture is this idea of how do you sort of have the mindsets, how do you actually live this Barakah culture? Remember, Barakah is like a culture, right? And I do sometimes organizational consulting, and I work with organizations on their culture. And I also define culture as mindsets, values, and behaviors. Or simply put, culture is the way we do things around here. But it's really usually broken down to mindsets, the way we think about things, values, things we value, and behaviors. So when I was thinking about Barakah culture, I was Barakah culture is also about mindsets, values, and behaviors, and rituals, right? And so this is where sometimes, if I want more Barakah in my life, I need to start thinking about how to have the right mindsets, how do I have the right values, how to have the right rituals. Now, most of us, when we think of Barakah, we think of rituals. We think of salah, we think of charity, we think of Quran, we think of sadaqah. And true, those rituals bring Barakah in your lives. But it's also equally important to think about the mindsets and the values. So values like ihsan, mindsets like, for example, having a taqwa mindset, being God conscious, having a grateful mindset, being grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? These are all mindsets that attract Barakah as well. So it's just like the rituals are important to bring Barakah in our life, also the minds as well. And we have this deck of cards called Barakah Culture cards that can explain what these are. And I think also in the book as well, the back of the book actually put a list of 17 mindsets, 17 values, and 17 rituals that you can experience, inshallah, and practice in your life, inshallah. So that was some source. And the key thing with these mindsets, values, rituals is that on their own, they might not actually do much. People have the right, they pray and they do Quran and they have they say we value honesty, we value integrity, but in the end, the thing that will unlock Barakah for your life is sincerity, right? You gotta be sincere. This is one thing that, again, Barakah is a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah, when He sees sincerity in your heart, He unlocks the Barakah in your life. Sometimes you might see someone like, I'm praying and I'm doing all this thing and I have all this value, but are you sincere? And subhanAllah, one of the best advice I received when I was growing up in 2007, had the honor of meeting Sheikh Abdul Bayya, and we asked him for advice. And his advice was, Ahsan al-niyya wa'amal. Have sincere intentions and work hard, or have good intentions and work hard. And I feel like that's the summary of Barakah culture. If you're to really experience Barakah in life, is have good intentions and work hard. Have good intentions in your personal ibadah, have good intentions in your family, have good intentions in your work, in your projects, everything you do. Have good intentions and work hard, and you experience Barakah in your life, inshallah ta'ala. Last but not least, inshallah ta'ala, I just wanted to share with you, subhanAllah, talk about again, sometimes how you plan, Allah plans. When I first made the intention to write something about Barakah, and especially Barakah culture, I decided to say, okay, I'm going to go to Medina, city of Barakah, and I'm going to spend some time there and actually write a guide called Barakah Culture Guide, or Barakah Culture Manifesto at that time. But something that was more like an ebook sort of thing about Barakah culture. I didn't have a dream of writing a book about this. This is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala plans sometimes. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala plans and make things happen, subhanAllah. And so I went to Medina and actually ended up there, and I forgot my writing stuff, right? I usually have writing pads and my research, and I forgot all that stuff. So all I had was those little hotel notebooks, right? And I said, okay, well, what can I write in these little hotel notebooks? And subhanAllah, I get this idea, Allah puts the idea in my mind of explain Barakah culture in 100 words. Imagine if I were to explain Barakah culture in 100 words. So I said, okay, Bismillah. I'm going to write some, 100 words in Medina, and between Asr and Maghrib, and I remember is in Medina, and these 100 words were written. So the words are, Bismillah, start every action with sincere intention and ask Allah for help. Life is not about you, it's about serving your Lord with excellence. Thank Allah for what you have and seek His sustenance beautifully. Be like a gardener, focused, hardworking, gentle, and trust Allah with the results. Cherish your parents and treat them with mercy and compassion. Plant seeds whose harvest will benefit generations to come. Pray and persist for your goals until you achieve them or are guided to what's better. Remember death often to stay focused on what matters. Send abundant salawat to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Alhamdulillah. SubhanAllah, when I wrote this, at that time, I had no idea that these words will be the chapter headings for the Barakah Effect book. Because when I was trying to write the Barakah Effect book, I'm like, where do I even start with Barakah? Like, how do I even approach this topic? It's a huge topic, and I was getting overwhelmed. And subhanAllah, these words which were written in Medina were the guide and were the chapter headings for the Barakah Effect book, inshallah. And also, for those of you who like, you can actually get a downloadable background free download desktop or mobile phone. People have on your phones. You can have on your phones, on your iPads, and your laptops. As a just a reminder, sometimes it's good to kind of read these words every now and then to kind of remind you to live with barakah culture and not to be obsessed with hustle culture, and for us all to live a life of barakah, inshallah. So you can check this out at productiveness.com/barakah-manifesto-wallpapers, inshallah. Okay. Well, with that, again, I want to say thank you. I think I wanted to make sure this last 45 minutes, and I'm going to spend the next 15 minutes responding to some questions, inshallah. So I think what I'll do is I'm going to stop the sharing here. And I see some questions, I believe, that are posted by Mecca Books. Okay, bismillah. Okay, Jazakallah. So question, could you share a bit about your personal journey? What inspired you to focus so deeply on productivity from Islam perspective? And how did that lead to writing the Barakah Effect, inshallah? Jazakallah. So again, so I started my journey in Iran when I was in university, right? So I was in university, I was doing my master's degree. I was quite sort of busy, right? I was a student, but I had like 2 jobs, and I was involved with the Islamic society, and I was like getting overwhelmed, right? And I thought, yeah, I really love to know more about this whole idea of barakah, like, so the whole idea of getting things done, right? So I started learning about productivity as a science, about managing your energy, your focus, your time, and I found it very beneficial. And that's what got me excited about this idea of productivity. I felt like this is a science that actually helps you do more and be more. So I got obsessed with it. I started got involved in software, and I wanted to download, sharing some stuff with my friends and colleagues. And then I started doing some training programs among the student society. And then, subhanAllah, those are the days when I started the blog productivemuslim.com. And the initial intention was to actually share what I was learning about productivity science and kind of share that with the world, basically. But over time, and I guess subhanAllah, that's where, as I was kind of asking, well, where does Islam talk about productivity? Right? Because I felt it's such an important topic. How do you manage your energy, your focus, your time? It's such an important topic. And I wasn't hearing it as discussed, maybe not clear in my mind, in the khutbahs or as it taught. Look, where does Islam talk about this? And subhanAllah, again, sometimes when you kind of have a question in mind, Allah subhanahu sends you the answer. And at first was coming across this hadith Rasulullah sallallahu that says, Burika li ummati fi bukuriha. There's barakah in my ummah in the early hours. And I think, subhanAllah, every productivity guru that I'm reading says, wake up early, wake up early, wake up early. And here we have a basic guide. It says, perhaps telling us that there's barakah in the early hours. They can't explain why wake up early is the thing, but because it's this idea of barakah in the early hours. So that's when the kind of first plant was this first seed was planted of the idea of barakah. But still, I was still very productivity focused. But how do you, even if you read my first book, probably noticed I was much more on the productivity side, get things done. Yes, in Islamic perspective, but more on the sort of how to manage sleep, nutrition, fitness. And then post the first book, The Productive Muslim, few things happened that kind of led me towards the Barakah Effect. The first was I was called to speak to a crowd at the called World Domination Summit. Right? It sounds scary, but actually it's just a bunch of entrepreneurs and authors and creatives who meet in Portland, Oregon. And it's mainly non-Muslims, but one of the founders is a friend of mine, Chris Killable. He said, hey, Mohammed, do you have something to offer to our community? Something you'd like to share from your perspective that you'd like to our community? So I thought, what would I talk to a non-Muslim crowd about? Like, what's my additionality to this topic? And I realized that it's the barakah, right? The barakah called barakah, the missing soul of productivity. You can check out it's called, if you type in keynote Faris World Domination Summit barakah, you'll see it. It's like 20 minutes TED talk type of thing where I shared about barakah. That's how that really resonated, and a lot of people found it very beneficial. After that, I started saying, well, what's the ultimate goal of being productive? And what does that look like? And the idea of barakah culture versus hustle culture came up, because I felt like it's almost like 2 worldviews. There's the worldview that sees human being as an economic agent, and let's sort of squeeze the most out of them economically. And there's the Islamic worldview that sees human being as an abd of Allah, as a slave of God. But like, what does being productive look like, right? So that was fascinated me. So I wrote that article about culture versus hustle culture, and this found that went viral. People really benefited that and found it beneficial. Up until that point, I had no intention to write a Barakah Effect book because I felt like, who am I to talk about Barakah? It's beyond, it's a huge, very deep spiritual topic. I'm not a trained scholar. There's no way something I should write about. But subhanAllah, again, sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts steps in front of you. I went to Singapore and another beautiful bookstore there, one of the bookstores, and the founder, Ibrahim Anwar, he said, I was asking him, hey, is there a book about Barakah, right? It's like one book that talks about Barakah comprehensively. He goes, yeah, there's stuff here and there, right? There's some, titles here and there. And most of them are more on the spiritual Barakah, but the way you're explaining Barakah into productivity, managing, like, I don't think there's a book. And then he just turns to me point blank and says, you should write it, right? And you're like, no, I don't think so. But subhanAllah, that's when sometimes kind of use, Allah sends people to kind of push you. So subhanAllah, that was the intent back then. And subhanAllah, that's when I think 1441, I believe, in Day of Arafah, said made the niyyah. Again, the outcome felt impossible. The outcome felt like this is beyond me. I think I'm not qualified for this. But go back to the equation I spoke about earlier. You put the intention, you do seek the means, you research, you interview people, you go through the process, and you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's permission. And alhamdulillah, by Allah's permission, tawfiq, purely from Him, the book came to life, alhamdulillah, rabbil alameen. Okay. So great. So the other question, unlike profit or productivity matrix, Barakah can feel more intangible. So are there ways to measure or gauge present Barakah in one's life organization? Great question. And I think, and that's kind of the beauty of it as well, right? And yes, maybe you can track some kind of margins, like when we practice this, we experience Barakah this way. But I will say Barakah is experiential. Even when I work with organizations and teams, I say it is experiential. So, for example, when we have better, let's say I'm working with a team sometimes, like, well, how to experience Barakah as a team? They will describe it. They know how. They'll say there's more cohesion. They say that even when we have disagreements, we still get along. They'll say that we are more spiritually aligned. They'll say that we have the right values. They say that we serve our customers appreciate the work we're doing. Our reputation is well. So it's almost like it's interesting when organizations, if they can actually explain when they experience Barakah. I work with organizations, especially Islamic organizations, where they say, like, we used to have Barakah and then we lost it. So, like, what does that mean? And then, well, we had all these issues now and the struggles now. Okay, well, how can you regain that? And there'll be simple things like, we stop making wudu before coming to a meeting. We stop praying istikhara for our decisions. We stop reminding ourselves what is our intention. We lost track of our intentions. So it is experiential. It is something it is intangible, but it's also very important, right? So it's one of those things where sometimes we have a tendency in the, I guess, maybe part of the modernity life, where we try to put metrics on everything. And some things are just, it's hard to put metrics for, except that we recognize this from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a gift and experiential, and it can be brought to life, inshallah. So that's something to keep in mind, inshallah. Okay. What about today's concept of multitasking? Can it be beneficial in any way? Is Barakah being removed by multitasking? So I love that. So again, when it comes to multitasking, from a productivity perspective, right? From a pure productivity perspective, it's they say if you've tried to multitask two mental activities, for example, I'm on the phone, I'm writing an email, right? So I'm talking to you on the phone and I'm writing an email. There's a switching cost involved, and it's actually, you're being unproductive. Actually, there's a lot of energy. You spend a lot of brain energy. There's a lot of switching costs, and it's actually not recommended. You actually end up feeling more tired, and the quality of both the call and the email will be terrible. If you are somebody who has, say, doing a physical activity and a mental activity, so for example, I am on the phone, I'm hoovering the house, right? So I'm going around, washing the dishes, I'm on the phone. Okay, that you're doing a physical activity with a mental activity, that's fine, right? So there's no issues. There's all like two separate parts of your brain. If you are doing a mental activity and something that's automatic, for example, let's say you're driving, you take the same route back home every day, and you're driving. So driving is a mental activity, of course, but it's taking the same route. It's almost like it's automatic for you. And you can talk to someone on the phone, you can listen to the radio. What happens when there's an accident? What happens when there's a detour? Suddenly you tell someone, hey, I'll call you back later, right? You lower the volume of the radio because now you need to focus. So from a productivity perspective, they're saying you can multitask on a mental and physical, or mental and automatic habit, but two mental activities actually is a lot of switching costs. Now, from a Barakah perspective, I especially bring this up in terms of being with our loved ones or doing spiritual acts of worship, like doing Quran. Sometimes you're reading Quran, you're on the phone at the same time. And I'm thinking like that there's a switching cost there. You're not being present with the Quran, not being present with your spouse, with your kids, right? So I feel like something there that's lost as a result of us trying to be more productive. And also speaking, I found that sometimes when you are more present, you actually get more done because you're there, you're present, and it definitely works better, inshallah. Okay. Is barakah a Muslim only concept, or is it a universal and anyone can benefit from it? Great question. So I actually asked a lot of scholars. In the book, I talk about this as well. Can non-Muslims experience barakah? The answer is yes. They can experience barakah. But the difference between experiencing barakah and recognizing who the source of barakah is. That's why sometimes one of the best way, in fact, I love the topic barakah because it's an icebreaker with somebody. You can say, hey, have you ever tried to wake up early in the morning and you experience you've got so much done in the morning? Like, yeah, well, that's barakah. Oh, cool. Yeah, I know barakah. I've experienced barakah. Sometimes when you share food, let's say you have a small pizza or a sandwich and you cut it in half and you share with somebody who needs that food. How did you feel? Like, I felt full. I actually felt good afterwards. That's barakah, right? So because the food of one is enough for two, the food of two is enough for four, as the hadith mentioned. So barakah can be experienced. But at the same time, it's like, again, as Muslims, we have the benefit of knowing the source of barakah and almost hopefully understand the different ways to attract barakah. So having that entire system, right? The mindsets, the values, the rituals. So we can, the fact that we have, imagine not just experiencing barakah once or twice, but it actually becomes a way of life. Again, barakah culture. So that becomes something good, very powerful, inshallah. Okay. How does the Barakah Effect address issues of stress, burnout, and mental health, especially for high achievers and entrepreneurs? Love this. And I think this is what my chapter on hustle culture and Barakah culture comes in, because I talk about the 5 pillars of hustle culture, right? And how that has led to the anxiety and stress level we go in. The individualism, the consumerism, the capitalism, the fear of death, right? And fear of poverty, and many other factors. They really have kind of made our driven us into this, where work has become the centerpiece of our life. And there's a great article in the Atlantic on workism, how it's making Americans miserable, because we've actually replaced religion with work. And when work has become the meaning and purpose of our lives, most people ask me, what do you do? Is the first thing to come. Work is a badge of honor. Work is our the way we organize ourselves, the way we sort of show off to each other, like, oh, I'm CEO of so and so, I'm part of this, that. And yes, again, we're not discounting the importance of work. We're not saying don't work. We're not saying be lazy or be. But what we're saying is, you are abd of Allah. You are a slave of God, and work is part of that role. So the question is how to be the best abd of Allah as an employee, how to get best abd of Allah as a CEO, as a business owner, as a family member. How do I have haqq? I talk about a concept of the total haqq balance, right? Have haqq across all my roles, not just myself, inshallah. So that's something to really think about as well, like how the hustle culture is leading to some of the epidemics of burnout and stress, and how that could be an antidote. Barakah culture could be an antidote when you're God-centered, akhirah focused. We have we do some programs as well, Product Muslim, really tackling this issue of being productive, but from a barakah culture perspective, how it actually reduces some of the challenge you mentioned here as well, inshallah. If you had one piece of advice for someone struggling to find meaning and blessing in their everyday hustle, what would it be? The advice that I shared with you earlier from Shah Abdul Bayya, which is have sincere intentions and work hard. So ask, what's my niyyah, right? What's my niyyah? For example, I say to people, don't write a to-do list, write an intentions list, right? So wake up tomorrow morning or this morning and say, what's my niyyah for today? And your niyyah could be to get some work done or to finish, but your niyyah could be, today I want to experience the Quran. My niyyah today is to be more loving father. My niyyah today is to be a more obedient son. My niyyah today is more to be more present with my kids. My niyyah today is to be a better neighbor. My intention today is to be a better listener, right? What's my niyyah? What's my intention today? When you write, what's my niyyah today, right? And you set those good intentions, subhanAllah, you'll notice the barakah in your life, inshallah. The other one is more practical, which is start your day early, right? I know, especially nowadays with Ramadan and suhoor, and you want to catch some sleep after Fajr. I'm one of those people, I'm not a anti-morning Fajr sleep, but I always recommend people to stay up to get the barakah of the early hours as much as possible, and just start your day with Quran, adhkar, with salawat. Again, one of the quickest, quote-unquote, hacks, although like they would use that term, quickest way to bring barakah in your life is Quran and salawat. Honestly, reciting more Quran and doing salawat is such a beautiful way to bring barakah in your life. Sometimes in these some things we neglect. We neglect these things a lot of us. We do, where it's like the last thing we forget, or we crowd them out, right? Quran and salawat, we crowd them out of our day because I think we're so busy. But bring them back to your life, you'll see the barakah experience, inshallah, in your life, inshallah. So how is the Muslim community responding to Barakah Effect? What is your perspective on the current state of... Oh, I love it. That's a great question. I'm not sure. Alhamdulillah, again, we've been traveling around the world doing some workshops, and you can tell that there's a thirst for this. It's like, oh, finally, I thought that we had to subscribe to hustle culture, right? I thought that we cannot be successful as Muslims unless we subscribe to hustle culture. But it feels off. It feels like we're losing our soul along the way. So it's almost giving a language, and this is why sometimes these frameworks help. They give a language to what we experience, and it becomes a thing that we want to sort of live up to, inshallah. It's still the early phases, and again, this is why sometimes you plant the seeds. But I'm hoping, I'm praying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, starts us to make us recognize when we start having this Islamic worldview, even when it comes to how we run our organizations. That's why I also talk about corporate America, right? What does corporate Islam look like? What is running an organization with a Barakah mindset look like? With Barakah values look like? What is running a family? What is living a life, being productive life from an Islam perspective look like? So these are all some questions for us to think about. But I'm hoping that the book provides the almost like a language and a framework to think about through some of these things that perhaps we take for granted. We think, oh, yeah, I'll get to that later. It's not important now because I'm just right now busy hustling, so to speak, inshallah. Wallahu a'lam, inshallah. Okay. Hope that answers all the questions. I think I've seen the questions there. And I guess it is 9:30. We did promise. I'm not sure. Let me make sure that I've not responded as well, inshallah. All right, then I hope this was useful and beneficial. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you all and bless you all for your time. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put barakah in your lives, put barakah in your day, put barakah in everything you do, inshallah ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept this Ramadan from us, inshallah ta'ala, and give us the greatest gift, the greatest barakah, which is to witness Laylatul Qadr and for our sins to be forgiven. And inshallah ta'ala, I want to say again, Jazakumullah khair to Mecca Books for hosting us, and to all of you for showing up live, inshallah ta'ala, and watching the recording, inshallah ta'ala. Jazakumullah khair. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.